members. So per our last meeting, we had discussed, so members will serve 4-year terms, and we are staggering the terms so that half of folks' terms will technically end in August of 2025, and the other half will end in 2026. There is no prohibition on members serving consecutive terms. So if your term ends in August 2025, that does not necessarily mean that you need to stop serving. So what Lauren and I had discussed was that the 7 members who were appointed by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, as well as the member that is appointed by VAMHAR, which is the Vermont Association of Mental Health and Addiction Recovery. Those terms would end in August 2025. And then the terms for the member appointed by Howard Center Safe Recovery, the member from the House of Representatives, the Senate, the academic researcher, the judge, and the prescriber terms would end in 2026. So that is sort of what we had discussed to present here. And so again, I don't know if there's a decision that even needs to be made. But that is sort of where we landed for the terms. We are waiting for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. They are going to do some outreach with the members that were appointed by them in advance of the August term deadline. And so they will be outreaching to their members to see if they wish to remain, as well as looking at the Burlington membership, because technically we are only supposed to have 1 member from any given town. So, and we have duplicate members from Burlington. So they're going to sort that out, VLCT. And then I'm also waiting to hear from Howard Center on their appointment from their Safe Recovery program. But we will have that sort of figured out in the next month or so. Any questions or discussion about that?
Yes, I have a
Yes.
question.
Sure.
So we're a member and like VLCT appointed me. What do? I reach out to VLCT and say, hey, reappoint me? Or do they have their own slate that you're discussing with them?
No, they are going to reach out to you. And because Liz, you are one of the more recent members, I don't think they're looking to change that. I think that anybody who's willing to continue to serve, who was appointed by VLCT, would be welcome to serve, with the exception of we need to figure out the multiple folks from Burlington.
Thank you very much.
Sure. So you should be hearing from Josh Hanford from VLCT. Caroline.
Yeah, so as the person who's the VAMHAR representative, I guess I'm curious about what the process was and sort of why, you know, as, you know, in being a person with lived experience, being a person who's also a prescriber, I just am sort of curious in what the process was for making the decision on that that position.
Initially, I wasn't involved in that process. Sarah, I don't know if you have any insight as to how the appointments for the prescriber and the VAMHAR representative were.
I am representing as a person with lived experience. I think
right.
I'm one of 2 But I also am a prescriber and, have other, qualifications. So I was just curious
Yep.
as to how that one was identified.
Yeah, so you are serving as the VAMHAR appointed person with lived experience. So there are two lived experience seats on the council, one appointed by VAMHAR, one appointed by Howard Center Safe Recovery, which is Jess Kirby. And then we have Heather Stein, who is serving in the seat of prescriber.
Yes, yes, no, and I wasn't saying that I was serving as the
Uh,
prescriber. I was just sort of
yep,
qualifying. But I know that the executive director at VAMHAR had said that he wanted the seat. So I was curious how that, like what the process is for
yep,
picking that, because it is, it feels, it feels like it's abrupt at August from where it was when we initially discussed term limits. So I
right.
just was like,
So it's,
if
and I'll,
possible, want to understand
yeah,
the process.
so it's really up to VAMHAR to
Mhm.
decide what um how they fill that seat and how they define person's lived experience. And Lauren, I
Mhm.
don't know if you have anything to add, but it's really at their discretion who they appoint.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Caroline, I believe we received an email from you saying that you would be okay with the 3-year term limit, which was always August of this year. So we let Vamhar know that you had said that you were okay.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and then that's how the process started. But as Kelly notes, it's not really within the department's decision. It is both if the committee wants to set up a process for who wants to appoint, they can do that. Or, right now it just defaults to whomever the statute says the organization, appointing organization is.
Sure. And I am absolutely okay with the August date. I just would, I prefer to stay on if I had my way.
Yeah, that's a discussion to have with Vamhar and,
Sure.
Any other questions or discussion on that topic? Okay, so Lauren, I'm going to turn it over to you for the policies and procedures discussion.
sure. So the, a couple of points on the matter, actually. So the committee was named in a lawsuit from 2023. In the process, then ACLU pursued charges against the committee and the department for violating the open meeting law, alleging violations of the open meeting law and the public records laws act. So the court heard the matter. It dismissed several of the complaints, and there are two remaining kind of complaints, claims out there at this point in time. One of which is that the committee does not have in place written policies and procedures as is required under 4772. I'm pulling it up right here. Excuse me, 4772, I think G. Um, F. So F3, so 18 BSA 4772 F3 says the advisory committee shall adopt procedures to govern its proceedings and organization, including voting procedures and how the staggered terms shall be apportioned among members. So the committee had not developed those procedures yet. The department under the statute as well is required to offer legal support to or legal assistance to the committee. So while I cannot provide legal advice or anything, I can draft these procedures for your review, and the committee can determine whether it wants to adopt them or not. Those were sent around. Sarah drafted them and sent them around, or Sarah sent them around on Friday afternoon. And that's what those are. They are draft operating procedures. They include voting. They include the terms that we just discussed, as well as reflecting the open meeting law requirements. Everything in there right now reflects open meeting law. Happy to discuss, going above and beyond the open meeting law. We can't go below. The only deviation I did put in there was the recording. As an advisory committee, you do not necessarily have to record every meeting and make those available for a year. But since we've been doing it and just given the interest in the proceedings of the committee, I think it's a good transparent step to take. So those are all for your review. The connection with the ACLU case is there, we can, hopefully they can offer some comments on this as well. Yeah, so that's what these are. Any questions about them and the context?
I realized that these were just sent on Friday, so you may not have had a chance to really dig into them to review. So we can certainly discuss at our next meeting, but I think they're pretty straightforward and there shouldn't be any surprises really in there. Jess.
Hey, yeah, thanks everybody. Sorry I was a few minutes late to the meeting. I just wanted to, ask, because I'm just getting on, I didn't have a chance to review these yet. I actually didn't see them on Friday, so I was just wondering, that, we can maybe discuss and maybe pass them at our next meeting, if that's okay with other people, just so we have time to comment and look at them.
Yes, and we don't actually have a quorum today, so we wouldn't be able to vote on them anyway.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, we can certainly discuss at our next meeting, and hopefully folks will have a chance to review them in advance. Any other questions or thoughts? All right, we might have a short meeting today. I was curious if anyone was able to attend the webinar that Vermont League of Cities and Towns hosted around the municipalities and their sort of portion of the opioid abatement funds that are directed toward them. I was not able to attend, but we thought if there were members who did attend, we might be able to hear from them regarding that webinar. Liz?
So, yes, I attended, as did several people from town staff, and it was very interesting. One thing that I brought up that I was told was perfectly acceptable was intermunicipal transfers. That if a town has opioid settlement funds and doesn't know what to do with them, they don't have to give them back to the state. They could give them to a neighboring town who has a more robust program on opioid control.
Interesting. Do you happen to know if that webinar was recorded?
I believe it was.
Okay, great. Anyone else who attended and wants to share anything?
I attended, didn't speak. There were a couple of other people who did speak, which is great. However, I just wanted to say I was happy to see that my municipal manager actually attended, because typically I don't get any attendance from the town of Rockingham or Bellows Falls. And I was happy to hear, see that he was there. And again, having no specific, I haven't heard any specific activity in town, so we may choose to provide our funds to another town that is more active. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. I will see if I can get the link to the recording and we can share it out with the minutes from today. If folks are interested in viewing that.
So I attended Madeline Motto
Mhm.
and decided that we would hold a separate one for the counties from the municipalities. And again, one of the concerns I have is, and I've talked to Jill Abrams about it, is kind of a lack of, or go lightly on making sure that that the funds are actually appropriated. I guess you can keep them for a while. If, say, a county elects to keep the funds and instead of forwarding them on to the abatement, that there seems to be a lack of kind of, they say create a paper trail, but that's, there's nothing really specific that Jill kind of talked about. And I talked to her about perhaps creating more of a monitoring guidelines or something for at least the counties, so that we know that, so that they know that when they distribute the money, say within their county to this organization or that organization, that they should have, an annual report and how the money got spent, and they should have a real, specific things for a paper trail. And that piece seems to be kind of loosey-goosey still right now. And I think I don't know if it's our role on the advisory committee to do anything about that. I think it's Jill's role, really, in working with the Brown and Greer. I think it's her role to do that. So I'll keep pushing her on that, but it makes me a little uncomfortable, that there's not more of more guidelines or something in place for those counties or towns that elect. I'm talking mostly about counties right now that elect to keep the money within their county.
So there is not a role for this committee in
No, I didn't think
the
so.
money that's directed to municipalities. And I'm a little confused because I'm not sure what the county role is, since the money is directed specifically to municipalities.
No, what we get a notice in a form, which, the Purdue money's coming down pretty fast, which is one of the things she said. That's coming up very fast. So there's a form that we get. I'm sorry. And we have to elect to give it to the, give it to the state or keep it within our county.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the committee to have visibility into how municipalities are using those funds, so that there isn't any like duplication of effort or, other things with respect to the decisions that this committee makes on how to direct the funding that the committee has oversight of. So I agree. I think it would be helpful to have some kind of reporting or visibility into that, so that, the committee can make decisions with that knowledge in mind. Well, thank you for that. And like I said, I'll get my hands on the link to that webinar and share it. We can share it out with the minutes in case folks are interested in viewing it. The final thing on the agenda for today, other than public input, is the funding process for fiscal year 2027. And believe it or not, we're going to be in that mode not too long. As we did last year, we will start the process in the fall so that we can make decisions by the end of the calendar year so that we can present those to the appropriations committees in January. So what we would like to do is have a meeting in July. We think it would be really helpful for our Division of Substance Use Programs to come to that July meeting and sort of give kind of an overview of the work that's already happening, not just with the opioid settlement funds, but overall, so that the committee really has visibility into what's already happening in the world of substance use, in order to make informed decisions about how best to use the settlement funds. We also would like to present information on what activities or services are reimbursable by Medicaid and, commercial insurance so that we're not funding activities that could be reimbursed by those sources. That is an issue that has come up with some of the funding decisions that have been made. So we want to kind of get a tighter process in place so that we are ensuring that we're not using funds for things that may already be funded elsewhere, and also that could be reimbursed from other sources. So we are planning to schedule a July meeting where that information can be shared with the committee in advance of our application process for FY27. And with that said, I would also like to request input from the committee about what worked well last time around with the application process, maybe you know, what changes you might like to see in the application itself. Did you feel like you had enough information to sort of make those initial decisions around, yes, we'd like to consider this proposal further, or not? Is there additional information you'd like to see from applicants? And then, we can make those changes of releasing the application in late summer. So, if folks have thoughts now, happy to hear them. Otherwise, we can discuss more fully in July. And I believe that meeting, if I look at my calendar, would be July 21st. And I realize it's the height of vacation season, but as you know, our meetings are recorded. So if you're not able to be there, um, you can watch the recording, but also can share your input individually. So curious if anybody has any thoughts right off the bat, but really want to lay that groundwork so that people really have an understanding of sort of what we're already doing as a department with respect to substance use, and also what activities really can be reimbursed through other means rather than using the settlement funds. Any questions or thoughts about that? Right. We are having a speedy meeting this morning. Jess.
Thanks. I know you're about to move on to public comment, I think.
That's fine.
So I was just wondering, if I missed, the conversation about the term decisions, and I definitely wouldn't, I like, if possible, if you could send, us something in an email just for, myself and other people that missed.
Sure.
And then also, could you share now, what what the information was about the Howard Center seat?
The Howard Center what?
The Howard Center seat, what
Yes,
the
I have not heard back from them yet.
Okay.
So, you know, I did reach out to them and, you know, let them know that you were their appointed person and that you've been an active and engaged member. And, you know, so, you know, we'll certainly let you know as soon as I hear back from them.
Okay, so what is where does it stand as of right now then?
Well, the terms would end in August, so nothing will change right now. But we did decide that that Howard Center appointed seat would, that term would expire in August of 2026.
Well, that's our recommendation. We haven't
That's the
decided.
recommendation.
Yep.
Yes.
I did check in with them and I have an email from them that, you know, if you don't hear back, I can share. So it gives you something where they said that they would like me to continue.
Okay,
Until then. Okay, I'll send it to you. Thank you.
great. Thanks, Jess. Any other questions or thoughts before we move to public comment? Okay. Any members of the public who would like to speak?
Yes, I would. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. So I'm Ed Baker, and I'm very pleased to be here. Hi, everyone. Hope everybody's enjoying this wonderful summertime weather finally in Vermont. You know, I just wanted to. I don't know if you get feedback from, you know, projects you've funded or not, but I just wanted to give you some immediate feedback about, you know, what I think is the premier decision that you've made to date. You know, of course, the Overdose Prevention Center in Burlington, and you know, it's going well. You know, the mayor's office is, you know, strongly, very powerfully determined to see this happen as soon as possible. You know, of course, you know, the Vermont Department of Health guidelines have been issued, and contracts are beginning to be formed with the city and with our chosen provider, which will be the Downtown Health Project, which is going to be the new name. It's Vermonters for Criminal Justice Reform, Tom Dalton, Jess Kirby, Carolyn Butler, and a few others. We're looking for a site now. Teresa Vizina is the person in charge of special implementation for the mayor's office. She's doing the greatest job ever. And there's quite a bit of I would like to call it a groundswell of support in the community, but that's a little bit of an overstatement. But there is considerable support developing in the community. Residents, some shopkeepers, certainly among the group who was using drugs, the group that will be served. So, you know, a lot of the providers are very excited about it. There's going to be a lot of networking going on, and I want to just personally, because you know how active I've been in this. I want to commend the OSAC committee, everybody here, and those who may not be here any longer, for your I think historic decision. And I like to add that there are no other cities the size of Burlington that actually have an overdose prevention center. So, you know, the research will be conducted by top researchers, Brandon Marshall and his team, who's also doing the research in New York and Providence. The research will be conducted by that team, and I do believe that the research will show that an overdose prevention center can successfully be scaled to a city of Burlington's size. And this will open the door, believe it or not, to every small city in America and globally to have research to argue that their city also open an overdose prevention center. In closing, I'd like to say this, that Sarah Gregorick was kind enough to helped me to do some specific research on cause of death in Vermont. I wanted to know what's the leading cause of death for Vermonters aged 50 and under specifically. And the leading cause of death for Vermonters 50 and under is accidental drug overdose. So with that in mind, I would urge this committee moving forward to please focus on non-abstinence-based, harm reduction-centered interventions for this particular group. That's suffering the number one cause of death in our state. I don't see any need more pressing. If you do, please tell me what it is, because I'll become an activist for that. So with that, I want to thank you for your work. I want to urge you to continue to focus on what is a little bit of the unpopular, non-abstinence-based, harm reduction focused services. Thank you. Thank you all deeply. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Any other members of the public that wish to share their comments today? All right, I'm not seeing any hands, so we will give you all some time back in your day. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you have a great day, and we will hopefully see you in July. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.